Buddy Martin with you tonight on the program. We have Urban Meyer. We talked to him earlier this morning. Really interesting comments if you want to hear what he has to say about building a championship culture. And he would know he had three national championships, how other programs have impacted other programs. And we'll talk with Urban about that. It's a topic we've talked about many times on other shows, including Shane Matthews. And we've talked with Coach Spurrier about it. And I'm probably in the minority, but I believe there is a big culture there. And Urban talks about that. Later in the show, Allie Peak Wilbur will join us back after a couple of weeks off. And she happened to have been part of that whole Urban Meyer thing since her husband to be, Eric Wilbur, was a punter on that team. We'll talk to her about that. A little later on, Carlton Reese, the thinker, very good writer at the editor of the Ocala, will join us. He has some thoughts about who should be in the pecking order on the preseason rankings of quarterbacks. A lot of talk about, obviously, about Arch Manning. He seems to be the choice of everyone. Nussmeier appears to be the second best, and lately it's been a lot of other people have had their names in it, but DJ Lagway seems to be the person. So we'll get to Carlton's thoughts about that all tonight on this program. Come join us. Tell your friends and neighbors we're on the air. We love having your comments, and guess what? Soon we'll be taking calls on this show. Can you believe that? After all these years, taking some calls from some of you. You have good thoughts. So stand by. Tell your friends and neighbors. The Buddy Martin Show is on the air, and Urban Meyer's next, right here.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening. Welcome. Well, this discussion has taken place many times on this show, on Pot Up with Matthews, etc., about the culture of a school. And does a rising tide raise all ships, to use the cliche over and over again? I contend that it does and impacts it. And my buddies and some of my friends on here tell me I'm nuts. That's not the case. It's just ball players and coaches. Well, maybe not, but there's one guy here who says it does. He would know. Urban Meyer's first experience he had when he came here with championships was through the program. Billy Donovan, the night he got a call to come to the locker room after Florida had beaten UCLA for the national championship. Never mind what I tell you about. Let's hear from Urban Meyer. Hello and welcome to Best Fridays in Football, although it's not Friday and it's not football season. But it must be because I see Urban Meyer here. We're so glad to have Coach Meyer back on the program, and I know he's having a pretty good summer, and he's about to break camp and go start doing football stuff. Urban, how you doing? How's your summer going? And what kind of big plans do you have for the 4th of July?
Well, happy 4th of July, and I'll tell you what, I grew up in a military family with my father, Army, sister, Air Force, and I'm on 2 foundation boards that support our veterans, and I can't get enough. You know, every part of our program over the years, buddy, had some kind of military influence. I love our country, but I'm finding as I get so involved with the veterans, I love the veterans even more. I mean, the ultimate show of commitment, dedication, unselfish. It's incredible, and we're just blessed to live in this great country.
Yes, we are, and my hat's off to them as well, and thank you for their service and also for your family to serve so well. I know your family a little bit. I was thinking today, it's been, say, 2007, by my math, which is not good. That's 18 years ago. We did a book called Urban's Way.
Wow.
And I talked to 50 people that you gave me to talk to. And among them were your family, which is wonderful. You have quite a family, and they're academics, and they're committed. They're very loyal Americans, and I know you're very proud of them. Speaking of family, catch us up on your son. He's out. He's working. Tell us what he's doing.
Yeah, Nate went to Cincinnati and played actually college baseball and football. Then was hired as a graduate assistant by Luke Fickle at Cincinnati. He did that for a year, and then he made a decision to get in the business world. So within a 12-month period, he got a wife, a child, a house, a dog, and a job. And it was a big year for him. So he's doing great. You know, he's learning the business world, and I love watching. He's a great kid. He's always been, you know, that he's been a
Yes.
straight A student and just a great young man.
Yeah, we're very lucky in that regard. I'm proud of my son, Brendan. We've been working together for 20 years on this stuff, and he went through this whole thing with you, as did I. And I can't wait to get to the heart of the story today because I was so impressed with the triple option show that you did on your podcast. And I want to get into that in just a second.
It's a good podcast, by the way, Coach.
Really good.
Oh,
really
thanks.
good podcast.
Yeah, it's good
And-
stuff.
And how you were so touched by what happened with Billy Donovan and how it inspired you. And it's particularly relevant in our program because I have a constant conversation about this. And Spurrier doesn't agree with me, Coach Spurrier, and Shane Matthews doesn't. And I keep saying it's about the winning culture. It seems like the rising tide raises all ships. You know, and they say, well, it's about having the coaches and players. Yes, it is. But the culture is impacted by winning. As a matter of fact, now that we're on that subject, you were so eloquent in what you said at your podcast about talk about that time you got the message from somebody in Billy's camp to come down to the locker room after the national championship game and how that impacted you.
Yeah, it changed my life. Billy Donovan invited me up to Indianapolis, and they're playing UCLA for the national title. Billy, of course, is a dear friend and neighbor, and I wasn't going to go. And then because we had spring practice that day, and Jeremy and I remember even Brandon Salary, so you get the hell out of here, go. It's I've never done that, and so I got on a plane. We flew up to Indianapolis, went to dinner, and then I remember going to the stadium and so many Gator fans, of course, and UCLA fans, and I walk around, and there was about a minute left, and Florida's going to win. And I get a text message from his operations guy. Said, Coach Donovan wants you in the locker room. And I mean, think about that. He's getting ready to. So of course, I remember walking. I asked the security guy to help me get me down to the locker room. I'm standing there. I watch the clock hit 0, and I tear up. I see the white ropes go up and the team celebrating. I'm in there in the locker room, kind of in the back, and they come storming in. Horford and Joakim Noah, Brewer, and that crew. And I cried with them. I mean, to see that celebration, and I was convinced, and I still do this once in a while. I go talk to teams. I'm convinced if you ever took a team into that locker room, experience what I experienced, all your selfishness, all your, whatever college kids do and all this stuff, you just put it away for 5 months. Just for 5 months, just be the best teammate, the best version of you can be, because if you have any chance to do what I witnessed, which we were fortunate to do a few times, it changes your life.
Urban's so hard. I'm sorry, Brendan. Just let me get this done, and you go right after that. I just want to say it's so important. It seems like to enjoy the ride anymore. There's so much pressure on coaches and players, NIL, money, whatever. It's a business now. I saw you at your best and your worst, but your best being that I remember sitting with you in the stands one day after practice, looking out at the swamp, looking up, and you say, man, I get to go here to work every day at this place. What a great place this is. And you enjoyed that ride, and you were as happy as you could possibly be. When you reach that moment of complete ecstasy and happiness. You think it's never going to end, don't you?
I do, and I tried. I was very unique, and I guess I wasn't because I heard from so many other coaches, including Coach Donovan, that you work so hard for it and it happens, and you're like, wait, that's it? Everything's supposed to get easier now, and it actually gets a little more difficult. And the wear and tear, because I've always loved my family so much, the wear and tear on your health, on you're consumed, and I was an extremist. I was so consumed that I had health issues, had mental health issues. I just got to the point where I was broken, where my body and my mind, I couldn't, other than the sleeping pill, buddy, and I know it's well documented. I don't want to regurgitate it, but
Yeah. It's all right.
other than the sleeping pill, I was recruiting. I was working. I never took a minute off ever. I mean, we might go somewhere, but I'm never off. And I wish I had always admired the guys. I thought Bob Stoops and Mac Brown, they became so good friends that they had a way of at least being able to compartmentalize their job. I was unable to do that. I tried.
Yeah, you couldn't do it. And then I'll let Brendan ask his question, but the moment of truth was you just won the 2006 national championship. You're sitting there with your dad and a good friend, and you're thinking, boy, this is great. We won the national championship. Oops, I got to go recruit right then, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it never. Yeah, I mean, I remember I forced myself after the 14, the one at Ohio State, because I said I'm not going there again. '06, it became an anchor around your neck, but '08 was the time that it really, and that was one of the greatest teams in college football history.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back and went 13-1 again the next year. But I mean, I didn't do a good job with that. I didn't let the players enjoy the run. I mean, if it wasn't perfection, I mean, I would restart practice all the time, and it became a drudgery. And it was a great team. We had a great run. I still have so many great relationships, and I'm proud of that players and those teams. But it wasn't the magical ride that you thought it would be.
Urban Meyer, Triple Option Podcast. That's great. And Big Noon, I can't believe this is like the 8th or 9th year of Big Noon. Brendan, it's a successful run, I'd say.
I love Big Noon. I was just talking about how it's a different show because, Coach, we have so many podcasts we do on our network now, and it's really cool how you guys really capture, just a little bit of the vibe of what's, I think people, how they want to ingest it. I enjoy watching it. I just want to go back. You built obviously championship caliber cultures, multiple programs. I just wanted to ask you what was, I think I know, but what was one of the non-negotiable principles that you instilled in your teams to create like the winning culture, and how did you ensure that would stick?
Well, it's hard to do. I think that's why Nick Saban will go down as in our lifetime as the greatest. Where, he had so much transition of assistant coaches, like I did, where they go on to be head coaches. He had transition, obviously, of great players, which we did, but they were more consistent, and that was hard. I mean, we won a lot of games at Ohio State. I think we won 11 games or 12 games every year, sometimes 13, 14. But it's just hard to sustain. We did a better job of that at Ohio State because I was a little more veteran of a coach, and it is culture to me. I would argue that great players are a mandate, but great players come and go. Great coaches are a mandate, but great coaches come and go. The thing that you can sustain, if the leader is strong enough, is a great culture. And the non-negotiables were selflessness. If you remember, I had a rule that you had to play on 2 special teams before you could start. And I mean, you look nowadays, that's like a rule everybody looks and goes, really? You really did that? I said, yeah, of course. I mean, Zeke Elliott, you think of all the Lewis Murphys of the world. I mean, those guys, David Nelson is a perfect example. I want to go play receiver. I don't care what you want to do. You're not going to do that until you start on 2 special teams. And so I think that when you start talking about, there's 2 components of championship football. Number one is the competitiveness of your team's got to be there and your staff, and toughness, but that's the third one. But the other one is selflessness. Football is the ultimate measure of selflessness. I mean, I always give the example. you got to run down a kickoff at 22 miles an hour and hit something coming at you at 20 miles an hour. And most human beings would not say that's fun. That's not fun. However, it's a means to an end. It's called field position. So why do you do that? It's because you understand that your team is more important than you. And that's what those great teams always had, the selflessness piece. And I watch nowadays, I still, whenever I speak and I see teams win, sure, it's great players. Absolutely, that's number one, and great coaches. But selflessness is a quality that is consistent with championship teams.
I never get tired of that story about David. After you lose that painful, and sometimes it takes a painful loss to change things, that painful game, the Tim Tebow game, he wants to get on the field. And he comes to you and says, Coach, David Nelson says, I want to play. How do I do it? And you say, you got to go to special teams, something he did not want to do. And talk about what happened.
Yeah, it was at 7 a.m. the next morning after we lost Ole Miss, and he was sitting outside my office. I come walk in, and I was pissed, because he really wasn't doing much. I said, what can I do for you? And he said, I want to help this team win. And I said, David, I mean, it's time's ticking, man. This I don't see it happening, but our rule, if you want to help, go start on kickoff return and make sure you learn it, and I'll give you a chance. And he not only took a chance, not only took it and ran with it, he became one of our best special teams players. And sure enough, as a result, he got to play. And when Percy Harvin got hurt against Florida State, we had a long discussion. And who gets a starting job? David Nelson. And he catches a touchdown pass against Alabama. And then against Oklahoma, he catches the game winner, the jump pass from Tim Tebow. That was a result of selflessness that I think that was cultural, because that's not normal. Normal behavior is selfish. It's got to be, that's above the line or intentional behavior. And he learned it and obviously lived it.
Urban, I know you get a lot of conversation and questions from young coaches. It's a different world today that we're in. The whole NIL thing has changed. You still have to recruit, but you got to recruit 3 times as hard. You have to recruit to keep your own team as well. And you have to recruit college players from other teams, and you have to recruit high school players. I mean, you took recruiting to a new level, almost an art, but it's so much to do. No wonder they got 50 assistants doing it.
Yeah, I would argue a little bit that I remember the coach at Kansas basketball, Bill Self. I went there for Big Noon. We were doing football, and he came out and said hello when we started talking. He said, you would love the recruiting nowadays. I looked at him and I go, really? He said, you don't have to call the families anymore. You're not writing letters anymore. You're not home visiting anymore. You simply find out how much it costs and you write the check. And that made my knees started to shake, like going, what? So I think, I have friends in the business. They're signing players they don't even know. Think about what I just said. So I say it's hard because you have to retain your team, but it's also all money driven. So at the end of the day, what is this school paying? Well, they're paying $1 million. Okay, I'm going to offer you $1.2 million. That's much different than when you're recruiting Carlos Dunlap for a year and a half, and you wrote him probably 600 letters. You're calling him every night. Or Tim Tebow, when you recruit Tebows and Jeff Demps of the world and Brandon Spikeses of the world, there was no money. It was all relationship based. So I think it was much harder back in the day than it is now.
No. Yeah. Then Brendan, of course, there's DJ Lagway, who could get a lot of money to go play someplace else. And he's committed to not just playing, but recruiting other players to come and play in Florida. That's pure goal, Urban, to have a guy like that.
Yeah, every great team. We've been lucky. We have great quarterbacks my entire career, and I love DJ Lagway. Everything I hear about him, obviously, you like his skill set. He struggled a little bit as a freshman, but boy, he came on, and I think Coach Napier has done a really good job with. I say good. We need to get great, and I think the end of the season showed what that young quarterback, what Coach Napier and his staff, and the leadership of that team, because. The one thing about the Gators, man, that book was written mid-season. It was over. and Gator Nation was ready to, I know there's big buyouts and all that. I don't know, the details of all that, but you tell me how they came back and they won against Ole Miss and LSU, and that team was playing really, really well at the end. You can't say that's by accident. You can't say, well, the players, no. You got to give Coach Napier a lot of credit there now. He held that thing together because a lot of times that starts to go south.
Coach, a lot of discussion in preseason last year was look at the schedule. Florida's got this crazy schedule. You look at this schedule this year, it's not that much better. In a lot of ways, it's a little bit harder in some ways. Do you, how much is that, going to matter going forward, do you think, this year? Because I think Florida, like you just said, sort of blew that whole notion away at the end of last year when they started to come on like that. And how good can they be?
When I took the Florida job, I didn't really study the schedule. If you remember, it used to be the East and West, and you had LSU as the crossover game, and they had Les Miles and great team, phenomenal teams, and then we always played Florida State. And then, by the way, let's stick Miami in there. And I was looking at these other team schedules, going, "What in the hell?" You look at Georgia's schedule this year, and their non-conference games. I think they play 9 home. And it's so schedule, of course, has everything to do with it. But guess what? Next year, Florida's still going to have a really hard schedule. And in 2 years from now, Florida's going to have, that's pretty consistent. First of all, it's the SEC. And second of all, Florida, I think the Florida gods just always want to make them challenge them.
Well, there you have it. All right. And here is Allie Peak Wilbur. She was part of this whole thing back in the day. Good evening to you, Allie. I know a little bit nostalgic for you, since at that time you were not married to Eric Wilbur, and but he was your significant other, and you guys went through that urban thing. He was kind of your coach. What were you thinking and feeling watching Urban Meyer?
So not only was he my boyfriend's coach, but my little brother was on the 2008 team.
Oh,
so I, experienced that as a sibling as well. I'm very, very close with my brother, and it does make you so nostalgic, and he is right. And I think, when Spurrier says he doesn't think a rising tide raises all ships kind of in these championship things, I think the difference between Spurrier and Urban is that for Urban, the basketball one came first. And so we witnessed the effect the basketball had on football. There wasn't that basketball championship right before Spurrier. So Spurrier probably raised the other teams behind him and not realizing it. Mm-hmm. Urban experienced it in a different way because that basketball happened first. And when he talks about being there in that locker room, I feel a similar experience for having been on University Avenue and watching these players talk to each other and say, we want this, we have to have this, we want this. Like, I watched that in real time. And I do think basketball had a massive influence on football. And, when he talks about the relationships, it's true. He had relationships with all of them. I was actually just talking to my mother-in-law. She's at my house right now. She was the president of UF's parents club, the football parents club, for 3 of the 4 years. Max Stark's mom was the president Eric's freshman year, and then Eric's mom was the president his sophomore, junior, and senior year. And she used to go and sit down in Urban's office and talk about things from the parents' point of view and stuff. And she had a relationship with him. All relationships did matter. And that's why all of those players were there. I do think that's something that Napier has in common with Urban, is that they are both fantastic at creating real relationships with players and their families. And I think Napier doing it in today's world is a rarity, right? Because I think what Urban says is right, is that most of the time it's just, hey, what's the number? Does it work in our numbers or not? Okay, let's sign the kid. And I think there's still a little bit of old school in Billy Napier and the way that he recruits, honestly, similarly to how Urban used to recruit.
Great point. Why do you think it is? And I guess maybe Gator fans got spoiled by having their golden boy come home and become the first national championship coach and have all those glory years when they won every time they teed it up at the Swamp. and they won SECs like they were falling off the back of trucks. And then along comes the next guy, Urban,
Yeah.
it took him winning 2 national championships. And some people never forgave him for leaving, even though he kind of broke down, as you said, and that he got to a point in his life where he was broken and he had to move on. And then you get now Napier, who is, he's okay, he's pretty popular, but there's something about Gator fans, their reluctance to recognize the value of a really good coach who knows how to build relationships. And I think Urban does. I think Billy does, and I think and I know Spurrier did. So talk about that.
So I think Spurrier raised the standard for everybody. And there is something to be said. There is no better story in college football than your Golden Boy Heisman Trophy winner coming home and turning the program into a powerhouse. He did it first. He is the reason that we're here. He's the reason we're able to have a show like this. He's the reason that Urban got, boosters that were willing to pour in money for the new when we got that. Remember when we got our new weight room, like all of that different stuff. That all happens because Spurrier came home, right? And he raised the standard for everyone. I do think for Urban, I think there's some things off the field that were a little bit more controversial maybe. And I think that social media was different than it was with Spurrier. Spurrier had you guys showing up every day and writing stories on him. And, that was about it, right? That was like, it became popular for news stories to be on the internet when at the time that Spurrier was at Florida, and that's fine too. But there wasn't this 24/7 news cycle like there was when Urban was there. Mm-hmm. Social media was just taking off. And so I think that he got way less of a private life and got way less of a rope than anybody before him, just as a sign of the times, I think. But, Urban continued that Spurrier legacy. He created a really good culture. He established this winning brand that he maybe doesn't get as much credit as he should for. He belongs in the Ring of Honor. He is forever a part of UF's story. And, when we talk about Napier and being grateful, I think we will see. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great recruiter. And we're going to see if he wins enough games to continue to be long-term the coach at UF. But, I don't know that he's done anything a whole lot different than Ron Zook, who got fired. Will Muschamp had a couple great teams in there. Dan Mullen had a couple great teams in there. I don't think it's like it's Spurrier, Urban, and then Napier. I think there's some other guys who were also really good, and UF didn't consider it good enough. At UF, really good isn't good enough. You've got to be great. And that standard was set by Spurrier and then followed up by Urban, and they proved that it's possible to happen here. And we're just always forever kind of chasing that, right?
Very good point. And I do remember going back and having gone through the Spurrier years, which were great. I mean, let's be honest, it was a fantastic thing to experience. And then I remember when Urban came along and revived it after Zook. And I remember the practices that started drawing people. It got I don't know if you were in school then. You probably were. We had so many people at practice. They had to start limiting the number of people.
I used to go. I remember when there was a Tennessee game where they were like, okay, you know what? We've decided that even families can't be here right now.
Yeah.
And ushered everybody out. But it got to, it just got so big and popular. Remember the spring games? There was a couple years where Urban had, 70,000 games, which was huge. And I mean, I think the last few spring games have been fantastic for Napier, so that's not even necessarily a comparison, but just the momentum that Urban was able to build here was huge. But I think back to the Ron Zook's who recruited Eric. And I think back to the players loved him. He was a player's coach. He wasn't able to remove his hand from some of the pots And I think that was potentially his downfall, right? When you want to be involved in every single aspect instead of trusting your coaches to do their jobs, I think that's part of it. And clearly he could recruit, because those were the players that Urban won with in 2006. All of those starters were recruited by Zook. But there's been, I think Will Muschamp could have been close. I think if he'd gotten a different,
That's a mystery to me. That's a mystery. I
and
think he broke it though when he tried to break off his relationship from Florida and Urban. I remember him distinctly coming out in his first press conference. Remember the book called Urban's Way? And that's the phrase I coined, and said they were named the street. There they ought to call it Urban's Way and whatever. Well, immediately that was addressed by Muschamp. He said, "It's not anybody's way; it's Florida's way." Well, that was a slap at her.
Imagine being the person that has to follow the legend, though. Like,
Well,
I can remember,
Urban had to follow Steve too. So
but he got Zook in between. I can remember the day that Spurrier announced that he was stepping down, which of course was the day after Miami won a national title, and all the news cycle changed to Florida, which was incredibly brilliant. But I remember I was 12 years old, and I remember standing there talking to my dad, and of course I was crying because the world was over, because Spurrier was no longer our coach. And he told me, it's going to be a hard go for the next guy. You never want to be the guy that follows the legend.
Right.
You want to be the guy that follows the guy that follows the legend. And I think Zook had that unfortunate, that was where he was. And I think Muschamp too. It's incredibly difficult to follow Spurrier or to follow Urban, because what they did was almost impossible to replicate, and you are always going to be compared. So I don't know if maybe he didn't handle it, in the right way publicly, but I can understand being in a really difficult spot, because you're trying to make your own identity, and you're trying to, win over your locker room. And, all those guys in there were recruited by Urban. That's a hard thing. And Urban went through that with Zook's guys. I don't envy when these coaches have to take over for the person in front of them, particularly if the person in front of them was really successful.
But, by all stretches of the imagination, he should have been the right guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the next in line in Texas.
Yeah.
He was the coach du jour. Everybody wanted him. Yeah. He had a background at Florida. He used to play games in the backyard. Imagine he was Tony Lilly.
Yeah.
He was a Gainesville guy in that regard. And you would think he would have been the perfect choice.
Charlie Weiss, I'm telling you pick a different offensive coordinator that's not Charlie Weiss, and Will Muschamp might still be the head coach.
I agree with you. I never liked Charlie Weiss from the get-go. I never liked him. I never liked his offense. And I was told by some of his assistant coaches, "You're crazy, man. He's brilliant." Well, I don't see it, Yeah. Anyway, the bottom line was that Muschamp wasn't the guy.
No.
It just goes to show you how difficult it is to find that right guy.
You are far more likely to fail than you are to succeed in college football, particularly in the SEC, where it is just a gauntlet every single week.
Yeah. Speaking of success, let me just get this in and pay a bill. Jeffrey Meldon, who's lollygagging out there on a 7-week vacation in Europe. Man, that guy knows how to take a vacation. He's having a great time, and we'll be talking to him while he's on some of the boats or ships someplace. Jeffrey, of course, does a terrific job as an attorney, but also as a Gator fan, sponsors many things. He does things like gets transportation for the band, et cetera, et cetera. He is all Gator all the time. And he loves the success the Gators have had, particularly the recent national championship in basketball, because he was there, able to experience it. A lot of the things that went on there with his friend Todd Golden. And he was a happy camper as he packed his bags and got ready to leave last week. So I want to tell you also that if you need any kind of special goodies, the little secret is if you go on his Facebook page and look for Meldon Law's Facebook page, they have some great stuff. Things like gymnastics tickets that even Allie would like to have. They're hard to get, and they do a great giveaway program. And, of course, they also are the only official law firm for the University of Florida. Meldon Law, they won't back down. Well, Allie, you're the one who should be happy tonight. Some big news in recruiting today.
Yeah, I mean, the Gators have I think there was a little bit of concern the last few days that UF maybe wasn't going to get their defensive linemen that they wanted, because there were some guys that we had, been recruiting had gone elsewhere. And I think people were starting to get a little bit nervous, but we have just kind of seen over and over again that, trust the process, right? Coach Napier has the ideas in mind of who he wants and who he's going to get, and he's not panicked, so we probably shouldn't. He got Kendall. I don't know if
I don't know how you say Gerbil or how do you say that name,
but I'm not 100% positive. He committed over Florida State, which is big, and Texas, I believe, as well.
Texas,
which, if Texas wants him, he's got to be really good, right? And this is a huge pickup for Coach Napier. High 4-star guy, big motor. This is the get that Gator fans have been looking for the past few weeks, and kudos for sure.
Yeah, he's 6'4" and a half, 315 pounds, from Fort Myers. He reportedly had 28 offers. In 11 games, he had 46 solo tackles, 88 total tackles, and 12 TFLs and 5, actually 1.5 sack. So he has impacted the Gators with ESPN, their rankings. They jumped up to 14th now, the 2026. I didn't get the year right. And it says that they don't get much love from ESPN. But he says, after surging only in the final months of 2025, the Gators used June to get the ball rolling much earlier on the program's 2026 class. As this guy Lederman wrote about it, of the 8 ESPN prospects committed to Florida, 7 have landed with the Gators and would be the Gators' highest-ranked defensive signing this guy would be since 2015. So, yeah, that's good news. And as of Monday evening, this past, Florida had 14 commits, with 12 of those verbal pledges made in the past month. What a June they've had, Allie.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And we've seen this the last 3 years from Coach Napier, is that June is always really heavy with commitments. They do a fantastic job when official visit season rolls around. They sell these guys on what UF has to offer. They generally get them to commit before they even leave town, which is incredibly smart. And I know, I've been following on social media, Gator fans maybe not being as pleased as they could be about where Florida is currently ranked. And I just caution Gator fans that June is not the same June as it was, 10 years ago. So much can change. So many players that have committed elsewhere could end up flipping to Florida if Florida has a strong season, and so I think that UF is right where they need to be. I think they have their quarterback that they want. They have some defenders that they are pumped about, wide receivers. I think this is going to be a strong class, and I think you're going to you're going to see it get even more strong as the season goes on, and when we put the football down and we play starting in August. And there's always such a plan when it comes to Coach Napier for recruiting that I really never get concerned about these classes. He consistently out-recruits his record. He consistently gets exactly the pieces that Florida is missing. In all aspects of Florida football, recruiting is not anywhere near anything I worry about.
Yeah. Well, this is my Kool-Aid for the year. And
okay.
I said I wasn't going to drink it. I was going to wait. But I tell you what.
It's only June 2nd, buddy.
I've kind of fell back into it a couple of days ago.
Okay.
When I sat down and actually talked to a medical person, an expert whose name I can't use, who told me, don't worry about DJ Lagway. He's going to be fine. He has the best cure you could get. He has the technicians, the doctors, his therapy says he's going to be fine throughout the year. I expect him to start on time and finish the year. So that was a pretty good little projection right there. Because for all you people out there who, and been many of them saying, I like Florida a lot. I think they got a chance to win 8, 9, 10 games. But the health of DJ Lagway is really the big concern. Well, my man's telling me, don't worry about the health. He's going to be all right. And he's a very well-known guy whose name I can't mention. So I said, well, you know what? If they do that, if Lagway plays, then you start thinking about all the positives.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive line, one of the best. The running back room was phenomenal. The wide receivers as a group are incredible.
Yeah.
Wilson and Wilson I mean, wow, they're going to be remarkable. The tight ends are good. The defense is better. The defensive coordinator's got his act together. We're hearing more good things about the safeties now at the front seven. And it just looks like it's given a little bit of luck and a few breaks, this team can win 9 or 10 games, Allie.
Yeah. I mean, I have never really been concerned about DJ's health at all. I talk somewhat regularly with his high school coach, who has assured me that there is not anything major going around, and a few different people in his camp. And so I think you're exactly right. I don't think that if DJ Lagway doesn't finish the season, it is 1000% not going to be because of some injury that we're aware of right now. Now, if something, fluky happens, like happened in the Georgia game or something like that, like we can't predict that, right? But I do not think that there is any concern about an injury that currently exists keeping him off the field. And I think that is good news for the Gators. I'm interested to see, I feel like our defense really improved the second half of the year last year. I'm interested to see if that continues on. I am fully confident in the running backs. I'm fully confident in the offensive line. I think we've got a really good young wide receiver room that can do a lot of damage if coached up the right way. And you know that I'm a Billy Gonzalez stan, so I have full faith there. There is zero reason this team should not win 9 or 10 games. I think 9 or 10 games is the floor, actually. I think they have the talent to even win more. And so I really do think play calling is going to be the thing that we are going to have our eye on this season, because it appears that the pieces are there and in place.
Yeah, well said. I think you're right. And as we get closer to it, we'll begin to drill down on it. We know about what I call the scorch earth Saturdays. Once they get that patty cake game out of the way with LIU, and then the next week will be will be a lot easier than normal. They've got 4 games there, or they've got. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more difficult time at Baton Rouge, in Miami, Texas at home, and perhaps the biggest game ever played in the Swamp. Arch comes in. We're going to be talking more and more about Arch, naturally. I read a lot of stories about him lately. And then they got to go on the road to Texas A&M. I mean, that is what you call a brutal 4-game stretch. But if they win 3 of those 4, because you can be the best if you beat the best. So that's the positive side of it. And why not? They are good enough to do that. And having said that, let's talk about the quarterback rankings, the pecking order. You hear Arch Manning, number 1, you're hearing, we don't know that yet. According to Coach Spurrier, who's the best quarterback should have played last year. And then, of course, Nussmeier, you got to give it to him. He's got the experience, but he got sacked 8 times by Florida. By the way, and I watched the LSU game over again. I watched the Ole Miss game over again. Florida won those games rather handedly. And now we'll see where it goes from there. But I think this team with that stretch will dictate just how good they could be. I mean, what if they won them all, Allie?
I mean, shoot. Well, what if they won them all? That would be crazy. I always chuckle kind of at the lists that have Arch ranked as the number 1 quarterback in the SEC. And I'm not saying that by the end of the season, you might not be able to put him there. I just think it's wild to put somebody there who has really, honestly, very little experience as the number 1 quarterback. I think there's several you could make an argument for over that, just based on experience alone. People are ranking him there by last name, not by anything we've actually seen on paper. But I'm okay with them not ranking Lagway number 1. I think Lagway is the best quarterback in the SEC, and I think he will prove that by the end of the season. But you don't know my feelings by not putting him there to start the season. I'm okay with the target not being on our back.
Yeah, that's a good thing, I think, too. And the guy I'm going to bring on here in just a second, he's got some thoughts about who should be ranked up there. But there are not a lot of great quarterbacks out there, I mean, in my opinion. And Lagway has a good year. He should be up there. In my opinion, you're right. His track record is a whole lot better than Arch Manning's, but because he's Arch Manning, and make no mistake, he's a gifted player.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff going on about stories out there now about Cooper's dad saying, really, his uncles didn't have that much to do with him. They weren't around for his games. He didn't really model his game after, either one of them. And he says the athletic ability he got from his mom. His mom was a world-class track athlete and also a high jumper. Did you know that?
I did know that only because I saw something that Cooper had said, but I mean, I don't think you should necessarily discount the Manning genetics entirely, but I also can understand the dad wanting Arch to be his own person and get his own credit for whatever his own achievements will be. But I can't imagine that it hurt to have Peyton Manning as your, or Eli.
So you go ahead and rank your top 3 quarterbacks or 4. And we'll get this guy to throw his in there as well. If you're going 1 through 4, Allie, the best quarterbacks, who do you pick?
I think I might go Lagway, Sellers, Nussmeier, and Arch.
Lagway, Sellers that high. Sellers who allegedly turned down $8 million to go someplace else.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all.
I don't know if I believe that, but that's what they're saying.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll give it to his dad. His dad said he told him, "You don't need $8 million."
I mean, so somebody offered me $8 million. I'm going. So
yeah, exactly. I don't know if his dad was. And so you're taking Lagway first.
Really, if I was playing at South Carolina, if I was the quarterback at Texas and somebody offered me $8 million, maybe I'm turning it down. But
yeah. All right. Well, here's Carlton Reese. Good evening to him.
Hey, Carlton, how are you?
Great.
I sent you a story there earlier about the quarterback pecking order. Carlton, do you have any thoughts about that?
There's several different ways to look at it. If I was a GM right now and you said, who do you want? I probably would take Arch Manning, but I don't know that he's the best right now. I do know this. If they gave me the option to trade DJ for any of those other guys, I wouldn't trade him. I would keep DJ. But if you ask a Texas fan, would you trade Arch Manning for DJ Lagway or Garrett Nussmeier? They're not going to do it either. I think DJ and Manning are probably the best 2. I love that Allie mentioned Sellers. I love Sellers. But if I'm going to rank them in order of who I would want to be playing for the Gators, DJ would be number 1, probably Sellers 2, Manning 3, Nussmeier 4.
Why doesn't Nussmeier get more love? I mean, he's a heck of a player, Allie.
I think he lost some crucial games last year, and I honestly don't know enough about LSU's team to be able to pinpoint specifically if it's just the offensive line was that bad or he just put himself in bad situations or what. But you mentioned the amount of times Florida was able to get to him, and that wasn't unique last season. So, I mean, I think he's the most experienced out of the ones we've mentioned, right? I think he has even more experience than Sellers. But I think he's good, but not great.
Yeah, I think our perspective is probably a little skewed on him because of what Florida did to him last year. But, I mean, you mentioned their offensive line. They supposedly had the best offensive line in the country last year when they came to Gainesville. And those burners at wide receiver they got, you would expect Nussmeier to just slice and dice everyone he played against. And he looked good, I think, against Florida. I'm not taking anything away from him. But the way they got to him, he was confused, and I think having seen that, we probably don't look at him as good as he probably really is.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
So the other factor is schedule, obviously, and then you have to look at surrounding casts. I think we feel pretty good about Florida's surrounding cast. I just saw a story where Texas has seven preseason All-Americans. 7.
I mean, we've watched what they've done in recruiting the last several years, so I don't think that should surprise anybody.
Yeah.
And I think, roster for roster, Texas does have a better roster than Florida. That's why they're going to be favored against us when they come to the Swamp. That's why, Texas is going to be favored in every single game they play this year. They do have a better supporting cast. Now, how much better? That remains to be seen. I don't know that I think it's heads and tails better, but it's certainly better. And coaching is going to factor into this too.
I know it's my urge of blue blood running through my veins. But when I started thinking about it and I started really drilling down on it, and after getting this really good medical report from a good source, I started thinking about it. I thought, I got that feeling in my bones that something bizarre is going to happen. And I said, I think they're going to beat Texas. I just had that feeling. If ever there was a time to have a big win for Florida, that Texas game, Carlson, would be it.
Well, if they win all those games like y'all were talking about before, Florida's going to be number one in the country after beating Texas. In my opinion, winning all those games, it'd be hard not to put them there. I'm kind of like you, buddy. I have a feeling about that game. I don't know what. I can't put my finger on it. I just think the Swamp is probably going to be as loud as it's ever been, and the whole. I think of Arch Manning coming in with all the hype, kind of like when Peyton came in in '95 and they took care of business. Then maybe we'll see a repeat of history.
Yeah, the Mannings went 0-3 under his regime, and then of course I will say that Eli won twice against the Gators, so he got to give him that. But I don't know. I just got a feeling. I just don't think I believe anybody is better than DJ Lagway. I just don't, and we haven't even seen the best of him yet.
It's gonna be really interesting to watch him and to see how they utilize him. Do they completely just take the reins off and let him go and let him be the athlete that he is? What has he learned from year one into year two? Is our offensive line as good as we think it is? Our wide receivers are young for the most part. Are they as good as we think they are? It is certainly not out of the realm of possibilities that Florida beats Texas, but it would be, I don't know, the biggest upset of my lifetime in the Swamp for sure.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. And so it's exciting. I hate to say it this way. I hope they continue to downgrade Florida and downgrade DJ Lagway because it's going to work in their favor.
We love to chip on our shoulder. That's how.
Yeah.
And that is how we thrive.
That's right. That's right. I think that would be a good thing for to happen. Look, Texas has never played in the Swamp. It's different here. I don't care how many times you say it's not. You rank all these other places. Go back and look. Why do you think that Mississippi struggle? And why do you think LSU struggle at quarterback? Because it's hard to hear, it's hard to play, and it makes their defensive players better. And those young DBs are getting better. I can just, again, I drank my Kool-Aid right here. I will
tell you though, Texas has played in the Swamp in 1940, and Texas won 26-0.
But it wasn't the Swamp then.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, it was probably a literal swamp.
Probably.
Yeah, that was also during the golden era, right?
It was the very beginning of the golden era.
Yeah, they never played in the modern day. Yeah, so you're right. All right, so last couple of minutes, who's the one player not named Lagway that maybe not so well known, perhaps flying under the radar a little bit, that you think could break out and be an impact player and have a positive impact on Florida? Al, you go first.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be flying under the radar, but I think in terms of importance, Jake Slaughter is probably up there as one of the most important players to have a good season for Florida. But I'm really interested to see Dallas Wilson and what he brings.
Me too.
I think he could be electric.
I'm with you on that. And by the way, I just wrote some notes about Jake Slaughter. He may be winning a ton of awards this year. He's already preseason All-American. He might become the most decorated lineman in a long time in Florida football history. He could be a top 10 NFL pick. Should be an All-American. He might win the Outland Award, the Remington Award, considered the best center in college football. That's one he ought to just lock down. So it could be a huge year for Jake Slaughter, Carlson.
Yeah, I like I think the wide receivers to me are the misnomer. I want to see how they do. They could be. We're not thinking much about how they are. We don't know how good they are, but they could end up being really good, and that kind of flips the script on that offense. If you're looking for a guy that I really want to come through, I'm back on the offensive line. I'm looking at Austin Barber. If that guy can not hold anybody this year and block like we know he can and has shown, and keeps his head together, that offensive line could be absolutely outstanding, even better than what people are prognosticating.
I agree with that. And Allie, I don't know what you heard. I've heard that he is a sculptured body now. Austin Barber supposedly looks like a Greek god. I hear.
Well, I hadn't heard that, but I'm excited to see that. I think that there is a chance Florida's offensive line is the best we've seen since there were guys on it named Pouncey, which is, Florida has struggled with offensive line issues for 2 decades, right? I think you can look back at those Muschamp teams and think about like, oh man, all those injuries that they had and who they were down to playing and how bad those ended up being. McElwain had line problems. Florida has not had great offensive lines a lot recently. And so I am just excited about the idea of that being a net positive for Florida as opposed to a giant question mark.
So much is built around the running game for Billy. Everything, the running game, when the running game is working, the play action is working. When the play action is working, they got their whole offense that were opened up, the tight end, the wide receivers. So that offensive line, you point out, they could be really, really good. If they can go out and run the football and score, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with on the national picture, and I think they will.
The running back room is the room I have the most confidence in. And
really, Jaden Ball is remarkable.
Yeah, I think Jacoby Jackson is great. I think that room is so talented. We never hear about them getting in trouble. We never hear them say anything except for positive things about each other. The culture in that room is incredible.
What about Trey Webb? Nobody mentions him.
Well, I just did. I said I'm excited for Webb. But I mean, Florida has a whole room full of guys that could start a lot of places.
Yeah, you're right. They do. Well, we've talked ourselves into a national championship, I'm afraid. We've painted ourselves into a corner. We had a nice dose of Gatorade. But you know what? It's good to be excited in June, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey, it's better than the alternative.
Makes the summer sort of. Listen, we're out of time. Allie, talk about your podcast, who you got coming up, what's going on with you, and a peek inside the Gators.
A peek inside Gator football. I have had lots of stories lately about all of our guys that we have recruiting. Pretty soon we'll be breaking down each position, what those rooms look like, what we expect from them, and then kind of go over the schedule game by game. There's lots of fun guests coming up too. So I'm excited. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it. Absolutely.
And Carlton, back to you, the editor of the Ocala, which is the fine magazine coming up. You're working on a book with France Beard. Give me a little bit of information on that.
Well, I got the magazine, working on their second issue. Also working on the book with Franz. It's coming along. We're going to have some great photography in there, a trip down memory lane. I'm also contemplating on my Looking Back series. I don't know what I'm going to write about since I went to college in the 80s. It generally will be probably around that time.
Well, we'll enjoy that. Lord, they're doing a good job on those. Thank you. Guys, great job. Great stuff. Thanks very much for being on the program.
Good night.
Good night.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you. Remind you folks about Titan MRI. Titan MRI and imaging. Acquired Highfield MRI, Joe Colorio. You can check them out now. You can get their special deals there. 2 locations serve you in Gainesville, Park Avenue, Millennium Center, and you can get those big cages that you can not be claustrophobic in. Great customer service. They make a special time for you. You can get nighttime if you can't get there during the day, and you can check out the self-pay options as well. Titan MRI and imaging soon coming to Marion County. Have a great night. Thanks for our guests. Back tomorrow night on the Buddy Martin Show.